Alrighty, everybody. We're back. And we're here with Shivani. She's a familiar voice around here. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Disha. It's nice to be back. Nice to see you.
I know, it's been a minute. Shivani has actually been on the show before, so if you haven't heard her episode, it will be linked down in the show notes. But for those of the people who are new around here, there's lots of new faces. Give us a brief summary of what you talked about last time, and we're going to kind of take it from there today.
Yes. Hi. So I'm Shivani, aka Dose of Shivs. I have a food travel lifestyle blog, and I had a conversation with Disha on her podcast back in 2020, right at the height of the pandemic, talking about being single and dating in my late 30s. And now that I'm in my early 40s, I definitely have a lot of perspective and learning since then, and really, excited just to share my experience, and hopefully it'll be relatable to others.
Yeah, and so we did definitely talk about dating and as it changes when you get older. What has changed about your dating life since you were last with us?
So I did, date and was in a relationship in my late 30s, and I was nearing 40. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but I, have grown as a person. And now that I'm, 42, I am thriving in my own way. And I'm really, just excited to share my experiences.
So there's this big narrative. I feel like when you're a kid growing up and you're a girl, everyone talks about one day you're going to get married and have kids and whatever. And they never paint a picture of anything different and that you can't possibly be happy any other way. But you just talked about how you were thriving. We're 40, we're single, we're living our best lives. And I think it's nice to remind people that, you can choose a different life path, and that doesn't mean you're going to be, a miserable disaster, which is what, if you're a girl, you're told. If you don't settle down one day, you're going to regret it, you're going to be unhappy. But paint us a different picture. Paint us where you feel like you're really doing so well and you're happy being on your own.
Yeah, it actually took time. So when I was after the podcast and I was nearing 40, I was really adamant to find the right person and just settle down. And I realized that I was putting so much pressure on myself versus my parents or anyone. I was just putting pressure on myself to meet those timelines. And I realized, through a lot of work, self-work, and through therapy, that I am okay where I am. I am okay being, independent. And the way I think I view myself is I have a lot of stuff going for me, personally, professionally, that whoever wants to be in my life, whether it's a friend or a romantic partner, they're just going to be added, in addition, right? It's not dependent on anything of that nature. I think for me, it's just being comfortable and knowing what I want, knowing who I am, and just being able to say, okay, I am content with the way things are. I don't need necessarily a partner to fulfill me.
What are some ways that you found fulfillment in other ways? So, because I think there's a big reframing, even whether you're single or married or not, doing things for yourself that you were taught a guy has to do for you. A man has to buy you flowers, a man has to take you on a date, a man has to, do these things for you. And it's nice, don't get me wrong. But even if you're married, remembering that, you can do all of those things for yourself. And if you're brown, a lot of us were raised with the complete opposite mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting because I love buying myself flowers. I don't wait for someone to give me or send me flowers. So for my birthday, a lot of my friends do send me flowers, which is really nice. I think that's great. It's a great gesture, but I don't wait on someone to send me something. If I want something, I'm just going to go and get it myself. And that's just the way my mentality has been. If you want something, just do it yourself and, get it yourself. You don't need to wait for someone to do it for you.
And right now, going through all of that, life has been busy for you. Where do your parents feel or fall in all of this?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I recently went to India and for my cousin's wedding, and my cousin was divorced and she got remarried, so it was really nice to see that she found someone and got remarried. But I also think when I was there, I had a lot of cousins ask me, don't you want to get married? Like you're, why don't you want to get married? And I said, it's not that I don't want to get married. I'm not opposed to the idea. I just haven't found the right person that I think, I want to settle down with. And with my parents, they're just okay with me being happy. They said to me, as long as you're happy, we're happy for you. We don't want you to settle for the wrong person. And, just based on my experiences in the past of having a broken engagement, I think my parents are just like, do what's best for you. We know you are successful in your own way. And we'll be happy if you meet someone that makes you happy.
Yeah. And like, I think it always comes up a lot. It's like settling down or settling for someone. And women nowadays don't want to do that. We don't want to settle. And a lot of people refer to it as tall girl problems, where if you are single, it's because you're too successful. You're so successful. You have your own place. You have your own life. You have your own friends. And suddenly, instead of women dating because they need a provider, they're dating because they want someone who can bring something to the table. And suddenly the bar is a lot higher. It's like, hey, I already make money. I already have my own place to live. You have to now bring something to the table that I don't already have. And so, people are saying it's really hard for guys to meet that standard. And I'm like, it's been like maybe 10 years of girls being able to do this, where the playing field has been leveled a bit more. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than it's probably ever been. For the existence of man, women have had to find partners to provide for them. And now that the tables are turned, and it's only, like I said, it's been like a decade, it's suddenly so hard for girls who are very successful, who have their own lives, who are independent, to then find a guy who doesn't find that threatening or meets those standards, really. And it's like, I'm sorry, am I supposed to feel bad for them? Not the girls, but the guys, when they're like complaining that like girls are so demanding. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have to like survive based on your existence anymore. Like, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I do think being in the New York City area, there's a high, successful women, men, in all genders. And I think I've always had the strong mindset and being independent ever since I was young. And I honestly think it has to do with just being in a city, like close to a city nearby, that we have these opportunities versus, someone in the rural areas or in another country that may not have those opportunities. I do also think that women in general, now times have changed. We can provide for ourselves. We don't need a partner to provide for us. But, at the same time, I've noticed that I have a lot of friends that are married that a lot of them don't work, they've given up on their careers, or they're just, deciding to be full-time moms or stay-at-home moms, which is fine. I do think things evolve and shift, right? So who knows what the next 5 to 10 years will look like. But I do think that in this day and age, you do see a lot of women just being self-sufficient, and which is great. I think we should, be educated. We should be able to stand up on our own 2 feet and not rely on someone else to help us financially, in that way.
Like, we choose to be with our partners. We're not forced to be
Exactly.
there. Because even the women who become stay-at-home moms, whether it's temporarily or for a longer period of time, they're still not trapped. Like, a lot of these women, it's like you said, they gave up their careers, but that doesn't mean they can't pick it back up if they need to.
Right.
It's like, right now, being a mom is important to me. This is what I want to focus on. Amazing. Great.
Right.
But I'm not here because, God forbid, this doesn't work out. I have to get out of this. I can just go get a job. And I think that's where like men almost have to like grasp that, like, we're choosing to be with you, and that's probably a bigger deal than us feeling like we have to be with you because we don't have a choice,
right?
Like, we have no options. But that also leads to us, as our very favorite Seema auntie likes to mention, we're not willing to compromise, and we're not willing to settle for what we don't want, because here's the thing, like we always say on the show, like, everyone chooses their heart. You can be in a relationship because you feel like you won't find anyone else, and that will be hard because eventually things will come up, and that's going to be hard. Or you can choose to be single and not settle, but there will be things that are hard about that as well. You just have to choose which version of hard you want. And then there's not settling and finding someone you want, and it feels like you found this like diamond that's in a field full of, I don't know, tomatoes. You know, because like with the dating app, sometimes I see my friends dating and I don't envy it. I'm like, this is awful. Like, I don't know if the bar is lower in terms of like expectations of decency, but also so much higher that like I want all of these things in a partner. And so it's hard all around out here, guys.
Yes, I agree. I also think, the dating apps, that's like the number one way to meet people. And I've met many people on the dating apps. Are they quality? Not necessarily. Would I like to meet someone organically? Of course, that I would love that. I also think it's also putting ourselves out there, finding ways now that, things have opened up and we're not really in the pandemic anymore, whether it's traveling or going to conferences or events. I think it's a really great opportunity to meet people organically. And I also think, it's interesting. I don't know what it is, but there are a lot of man-child, I want to say, because I've noticed being 40 plus that there are many men that just don't want to commit for whatever reason. I don't, know why. And I do want to say that, just it's okay if you're over 40 and you have not met the right person yet. Age is just a number. I don't mind dating younger, but I do feel there is a challenge in that too, because when I tell, guys, because I don't look my age.
Not at all. Not even close.
Yeah. And when people find out my age, or guys find out my age, they're like, but we thought you were much younger, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And I think that intimidates them because they're like, oh, she's older, she's well capable, she's settled in her own way in her thinking. So I do think that is a challenge for me particularly, because it's like you meet guys over 40 that don't want to commit, and then you meet guys under 40 that are kind of intimidated by you.
For sure. And I think it's, stereotypically it's much more common where guys are happy to date younger, but they're much more hesitant about dating someone who's older than them. Whereas women will kind of date either direction. I feel like we're less picky in the age department at least, but like guys, it's like, I mean, come on, the stereotype is like the 50-year-old guy dating a 22-year-old. Like Leo is out here living his best life with like a 19-year-old, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Are you talking at all? Like, I don't know. But, it gets tricky.
Varies.
There's like a double standard in the age department. And of course, like there's like the conversation of having kids and stuff that as you get older, and if a guy wants a family, then they start bringing that up. How do you navigate those conversations about like kids, or if they want kids and all of that?
Yeah, so I definitely ask right away if I am in a relationship with someone, or if I'm dating someone, like what are you looking for? What are you looking to have kids? And a lot of times they're indifferent, and I don't know why. It's like either a yes or no, either say yes, you want kids, or no, you don't, or, there shouldn't be indifference with that. So that's like a red
big
flag.
One to not have a decision on.
Yeah, it's like a red flag for me when a guy says he's indifferent. For me, I do want kids. I do want a family. I don't know what that will look like for me, in the future, but I do know that I would want someone to be open-minded about having a family versus being indifferent.
Yeah, that's definitely not a minor detail to just be like, whatever. But, what's interesting for me is, like you, we're both brown girls. We grew up with a pretty similar upbringing in some sense in terms of the value of marriage and families and all of that. But when you marry someone who's not brown, like I did, it could not be more different. And I wish we could at least expose brown girls to that, to a world where like there's less than zero pressure to get married. I mean, the amount of people in my husband's friend and family circle, and even of my friends, where like there's women that are in their 40s and single and fine with that. Like they're not even really looking to get married, or at least it's not like an active thing where they're like, oh, I'm always dating because I want to settle down. They're just like, yeah, like if I meet someone, I do. If not, like I'm happy here. I have my own place. I do my thing. But there's no family pressure. There's no like, hey, like when are you gonna bring someone home? Like, hey, when are you gonna settle down? it's just like, it's whatever. If they're happy like this, that's fine. If they're not. And it's so different than how we're raised. And there's no and I feel like a lot of brown girls end up settling because of the pressure.
Yes.
Right? Like they just like will settle for whoever their parents pick, or
they'll just settle for the wrong person because they're at an age. And I think that was where I was when I was like 39 approaching 40. I was like, I need to settle down. I need to get married. I need to have kids. My fertility is like it's kick-looking, you know? And that was the wrong mentality. And I realized when I was doing that, I ignored all the red flags earlier on in the relationship. And I was like, wow. And I didn't realize until I was doing my own therapy that, oh, wow, these are red flags that I ignored because I was, you know, trying to just get through, get what I wanted because I was at a certain age. Now, in my early 40s, I'm like, you know what? If it happens, great. But as long as it's with the right person, you know? And also, I know women that are single moms, you know, through whether it was, you know, through sperm banks or whatever, they were able to have their own children and are raising kids. Like I know someone that's, you know, a South Asian female. She is like professional, career, you know, oriented, everything, has her own place in the city, and she's raising 2, you know, beautiful children on her own. Obviously she has the means to hire a nanny and all those things, but I think, you know, when I think about my future, I think, okay, you know, those are possibilities. If I want to have kids and if I don't meet the right person, maybe I will go that route. I'm not sure yet, but all I know is that if I want something, I will find a way to get it.
And I love that we're not letting partners stop that, because that is becoming much more common where women are just like, you know what, I do want to have kids, haven't found someone that's going to be the father of my children, whether it's because we haven't found the right kind of guy or someone who's willing to commit, whatever the reason, like that's not a reason to stop anymore. We literally can have kids just by like going to a sperm bank and having some kids. I mean, Mindy Kaling, I think, did it too, right? She had 2 kids.
Mindy Kaling did it, and I think that's just really incredible.
Yeah, and like, again, it's not a walk in the park. No one's going to sugarcoat that being a parent, whether there's 1 or 2 of them, is easy. But if you want that and you're able to and you have the resources, and here, like we go back to choosing your heart, it's like you can be a single parent and raise the kids that you want, how you want them, or you can be stuck in a relationship where you have a partner who isn't willing to be the greatest dad. So it's hard either way.
Yes, exactly. It's hard either way. And I think if I would just tell young girls now, you know, I would tell them, if you want kids, then freeze your eggs, you know, do what you can. If you want, you know, you're focused on your career and you just haven't met the right person and you're, you know, you're able to, you know, fund that, do it. Because I think that was like the biggest thing that, you know, I didn't do when I was in my mid 30s. I remember going to an IVF specialist at that time just to talk about, you know, fertility. And at that time in my mid 30s, I didn't think about it as much, right? And it was like, oh, whatever, you know. But then when I hear stories about other people going through the process and, you know, being able to do that, I was inspired. You know, I was like, okay, this is really good. And I wish I had told my younger self, you know, in my mid 30s to have done it. But it's better late than never, right? So that would be my advice to young girls listening.
Yeah, that's a thing that as I get older and, you know, we start talking about having kids and all of that, that I think about how no one teaches girls about their fertility. The only thing they say is make sure you're getting your period. And even if you have a slightly irregular period, they'll still be like, it's fine, go on birth control, like everything's fine, you'll have kids one day. And then when you have a hard time, they tell you all the things you did wrong.
Right.
But no one told you. And that's what kills me, because I always say, like, I don't even have kids, but I'm like, if I have girls, like starting probably from 20 and every 5 years from there, getting that fertility checked just so they know and they can make an informed decision. Because you know what? Yeah, when you're in your 20s, it's a lot easier to get pregnant, but that's also not always true. There are women in their mid 20s that had to go through IVF and have had to go through fertility treatments because no one told them to keep an eye on it, or what those signs and symptoms can look like, or what kind of conversations to have with your OBGYN or your fertility specialist.
Right.
And I was like, if we have girls like literally starting at 20, so that if they know like, hey, I'm gonna have a hard time even in my 20s, maybe we get the kids out of the way first, so you don't have to go through a nightmare later. Whether that's, hey, we're gonna help you out, we're gonna go through IVF, maybe you're gonna do it on your own, or hey, maybe we focus on dating more right now in our career later. Because I think that's the part of the conversation about women having it all that never gets brought up.
Right.
Is that you can have it all, maybe not all at once, but if you plan appropriately, you can. That, do we want to have kids in our 20s? Can we wait till we're in our 30s and 40s? Do we have to switch things around? Do we prioritize dating now or later? We have to have those conversations so that girls can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And then they can build their lives accordingly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's so important to have those conversations earlier on. And also it's refreshing for me. Like, I see a lot of women over 40 that I actually know personally that are having kids for the first time, whether it's through medical assistance or whatnot, but it's still really inspiring for me. I know a few women, either in their early to mid 40s, having children and healthy babies for the first time. And I was so inspired by it. I was like, wow, it's possible. So if that is something that you choose, that you want, know that it is possible. And technology and science it's ever changing, and things are, possible now than they were before.
Yeah, science has come a very long way. And I'm not going to pretend like it's a walk in the park. All of these IVF treatments, all these fertility treatments, they're all going through your body. Like the partner, whoever gave the sperm, whether it's your husband or a donor, they don't have to go through any of that. And so even you deciding whether this is something you want to go through will impact the decision on when you want to have kids.
Right.
Because, yeah, you can have kids in your 40s. I mean, my husband's mom, they were both born in her 40s.
Wow, that's really great.
She had twins, so she got them out of the way all at once. But, she has always been very open about the struggles that it took to get to that point.
Of course, the journey of getting to that point.
Yes, and this was way back in, like, the 80s, okay? This wasn't in 2023.
Yeah.
When the treatments were much less accessible, much more complicated, and not as successful as they are now. But also not painting the picture of, like, it's going to be so easy no matter what you do. It's like there's different routes you can take. You just have to know the pros, the cons, and what you want to go through.
Exactly. And if there is, something that, somebody that really wants something, I feel like there is a way. It's just a journey to get there.
Exactly. And then factoring in other big life choices, like things like moving, or things like being near a family, or your career, all of that stuff. Because when you're young, like, you graduate and the world is your oyster. Everything is there. I can travel. I can move abroad. I can settle down, have a family. I can do all of these things. But as you get older and life becomes more complicated, it becomes harder. And that's also where I feel like dating becomes more complicated. Because when you're younger, this person is just sort of, both of your lives are uncertain, right? Your life hasn't been planned out yet.
Right.
There's more flexibility. You're more willing to compromise or be understanding, or wait for this person to be in school or out of school, whatever. But when you're in your 40s and even 30s, your life is pretty established, right? You have a routine, you have a home, you have a life, you have your friends. So now you're literally trying to find someone who is just the perfect puzzle piece to fit in. And the compromise is much more complicated because it can be life altering in a way that in your 20s, like, who cares if I move from New Jersey to California, whatever. Like, what did I build here so far, right? Nothing. Right. But when you're 40, it's like, I have a career and all this stuff.
Right.
It's a bigger shift.
Exactly. You're very more established, right? In your career, in where you live, in your thinking. That's like the biggest thing I've noticed is, like, we're so established in the way we think and do things that, yeah, it may be a challenge to live with someone that, that you're dating. It will be a challenge. But you know what? I actually want to meet someone that's going to say, yes, I am ready to ride this with you, versus giving up so easily. And I honestly think that, the right person will, be there on your ups and downs, right? The right person will be there with you as your partner going through the roller coaster.
Yeah, and the change in thinking is so funny because I just hit 30 in January, and I think about what I would be like, because most of my friends are single or dating right now. I'm really the second married friend.
Oh, wow.
And literally one of my friends got married last October, and that was like after 4 years of me being married. And they're all older than me. I'm the youngest one. But I think about how much I've changed, and I think about what if I was dating right now at 30 versus when I met my husband I was 22.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, it would be so hard. I'd be an absolute monster in the sense that, one, I, like you, like, don't care about anybody else's opinion. Like, I don't care about what you think of me. I don't care about, like, physically if you have issues with the way I look or the way I dress or what I want in my life. Like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like when I was younger, it was like you wanted a boy to pick you, right? That was, I feel like, the headspace in your early 20s is you wanted a guy to like you. You wanted to, like, impress him. You would always get dressed super cute for a date, but it was always for the guy. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Whereas now I'm like, bro, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Like, I want to be wined and dined, and I want you to take me out on a date. Not like in my 20s, I was like, I'll go on a coffee date with you. I don't care. I'll show up with my backpack, with my laptop, and do homework afterwards. I don't give a shit. Now I'm like, oh my God, it would be an absolute disaster for me.
Oh my God, I can relate to that because I remember in 20s, 30s, right, whatever. I feel like one of the things that I would do is go to Dry Bar and get my hair blown out just for a date. And I'm like, no. And now I'm like, I don't care whether you like my hair or you don't like my hair. This is my hair. I have a lot of grays now. So, this is who I am. So I do understand that mind shift of, and when you go through experience and as you get older, you do change, right? Your personality evolves and the way we think evolves. And I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, like confidence, I think, goes up in most girls by the time they hit 30. Like, your self-worth goes up. What you bring to the table is obviously worth even more, like, just monetarily speaking, most of the time. And it's like, it is harder to date because now the bar is a lot higher because, you watch the younger crowd when they're in college. Now I see them dating and I see them willing to date guys who treat them like shit, right? We all did it. We were all young and we're like, you just wanted a boy to like you. And so when you don't have that self-worth of like, actually, I'm the shit and I am the prize, like, you are willing to be treated like crap.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you're willing to compromise.
Yes.
You're willing to not go on a real date.
You're willing to be a doormat. Yes, exactly. If you don't have the right self-confidence and self-worth. And that also brings me to therapy. Like, therapy is I think in our culture, it's very taboo. I know we talk about mental illness and wellness and all those things now, but it is so taboo, especially when I say, okay, I'm seeking a therapist or I've seen a therapist. Well, I have friends and family that are just like, look at me like, do you really need one? Like,
just be happy.
Like, we could be your therapist. Do you really need to see a professional? And I'm like, yeah, I actually do. And I think many times we go to seek professional help because the people that don't seek it, like our friends or family, don't seek it. And we're going to seek it on their behalf, essentially. So I just feel like it's something that I am a huge advocate of seeking therapy. And I also want to say that I have the privilege of working with really good therapists. Like, it's not covered through insurance or anything like that. You have to pay out of pocket and it is expensive. So it is a privilege, I think, to be able to see or seek professional help. I wish many companies or many places would offer, mental health services in their benefits. And I hope to see that, in the future.
Yeah. And that is changing. A lot of insurance companies now are willing to offer it. But again, they don't cover much of it. Your, fees or whatever, Lord knows how they bill, comes out to still be really high.
Yes.
But like you said, that taboo and the stigma is still there. Like, we can sit here and beat that dead horse till the end of time that like therapy is a good thing, you should seek out therapy if you're feeling like this, yada yada yada. And lots of young people agree, like, yeah, it's a great thing, we don't judge each other for going. But a lot of young people are also at the mercy of their parents because who is going to pay for this? And if you have brown parents who are like, why do you need to go to therapy? like our parents' generation really hasn't changed their stance on it. So if you're like a kid who's like, hey, I'm not in a good place, I really need to get help, when you're stuck with a culture that literally is like, why don't you just be happy? Like, you don't need therapy. Now you're stuck because you financially are stuck. Their insurance is probably covering you if you're under 26, and you don't have any money. And even if you do, it's really expensive. And when you're 22 and you get your first job, you're not making that much money, right? It takes a while to really build that. And so kind of like, how do we, I guess, help out those kids who are just like almost like trapped, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't know how to get the help they need. And nobody expects a therapist to work for free. Like no matter how kind you are and how much you want to help our community, like we all have to pay bills. We all have to put food on the table. So that can be a bit difficult, I think.
Yeah, no, it is. I think also back then we didn't have like access to these things. It's talked about more now. So I think before, when I was, when I think about the past, I could have benefited from a lot of therapy growing up. But, I'm glad that these services are available, and there are apps out there, that can help with mental illness and wellness and all those things. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can help people now.
Absolutely. Now that you're pretty like established, you've got your life together, what have been some things that you're really proud of? What are you so excited about that you've kind of accomplished or got coming up in life?
Yes, I do. I have a few projects coming up, a few collaborations coming up that I'm extremely proud of. More to come on that. I'm extremely proud of building my blog, and that is something that is super important to me. Like my Dose of Shivs blog, I created it 4 years ago. It has organically grown, and that is something, I would want my partner to be supportive of. So I am, think that is your blog or your small business or any type of, whether it's your professional career, is something that I feel that a partner should be proud of and supportive of. And, there have been times where I met guys that weren't supportive of that. And I don't know what it is, but I'm like, this is my baby. I'm building this. This is what I'm passionate about. And I think, my thing is, if you are working towards a goal or something, a passion project or something that you're proud of, it will show, and the right person will be supportive of it, and you won't have to nag them to be supportive of it. And I think that's one thing that I've learned.
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, finding someone who's supportive of the things you do and the things you're proud of is always difficult. But I think the most important thing you pointed out is being surrounded by people who are supportive of you. Because one thing I always stress on this show, because it is a relationship podcast at the end of the day, like, your partner, whoever you end up with, can't be everything.
Right.
They can't be your best friend and your lover and your supporter and your whatever the fuck, like your financial advisor, whatever role you want them to fill. Like, you have to have other people in your life for that. And I've always stressed that, like, yes, it's important to find someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. I'm married. I love it. Highly recommend. It's a good time. But I think the most important people in my life are also my girlfriends. I have a really close group of girls that I've known for almost a decade now, probably more. And they're so supportive. They are my biggest cheerleaders. I can go to them for advice. I can go to them for all different things. And they fill a very different role in my world that my husband doesn't. Yes, he's supportive and he's great and blah, blah, blah. But like, there are times where like, you won't understand what I need to vent about right now. So I know which girlfriend I can go to for that. Or I need help with this project and you're not the right guy for this. I need someone else. And so I feel like when you take the pressure off this one partner who has to be everything, and you have a network of people who are filling different roles in your life, the pressure to find this like one pristine human being for you is a lot less.
Yes, no, I agree in that there are, having those friendships, and I do have a whole network of close friends that I do feel are supportive of my blog and of the things that I'm passionate about, so that is true as well. But I do think that, I would want reciprocation. If I am, in a relationship with someone, I would want that reciprocation of support or just thoughtful thinking, and kindness, and someone that you would feel safe with, in terms of emotional support as well. So I think that is, they can't be everything for you, and you have your, group of friends or girlfriends or whoever, your family to lean on. But I think it's important to find someone that, is going to be your cheerleader in a way. Because when I think about, a relationship, I think about a partnership. I think about someone who's going to be a partner with everything in terms of, if they want a family, being there and supportive and, going through the journey of parenthood. If it's your small business or your blog or something of that, it's like someone who's supportive and just asks questions and has those conversations. I don't expect someone to be everything for me, but I do expect some sort of reciprocation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you definitely don't want to end up with someone who's like trying to bring you down or trashing the things that are important to you, or just like not really wanting to be a part of that. Because that happens.
Yeah, and I also think, every relationship is give and take, right? And it's like sometimes when I think back of my last relationship, I'm like, I gave a lot than I received, and I think that was my own fault in a way, where I've learned that, I've learned about setting boundaries. I've learned that I don't need to give so much to someone that doesn't deserve it.
Looking back, you've had, different relationships and all of that, just like in regards, I guess, to your dating life. Do you look back and have any regrets or any things you wish you did differently?
I wish I had worked on myself a lot sooner than later. And I wish that I didn't put timelines, like as I was saying, when I was nearing 40, I was so pressuring myself to settle down, find the right person and get married and have kids and do all these things on my checklist. I wish I didn't put that timeline on myself. And I think the last few years, just working on myself, going through therapy and just really understanding what I want and what I don't want and how to navigate has helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's really insightful, because like we all get older and we look back at our lives and we think about like, the things we put up with or the things we could have done differently. And, it's important to eventually look in the mirror and think about what can we do better, because that's how you get to a point where it's like, I know what I want. I know the things I'm willing to compromise on and not, the boundaries I'm willing to set, because like we mentioned before, when you're younger, you just don't have that. But it's a learning experience.
It is. It's been a learning experience, I think, since I joined the podcast 3 years ago. I've learned a lot. I've been through a lot in terms of my experience going through, a relationship, heartbreak, and all those things. But I've come out stronger every time. So I am proud of that.
What are some of the things you've learned?
I've learned that I'm okay in my own company. I loved enjoying going to the cafe, getting myself a treat, going for walks, doing things that make me happy. Creating recipes and experimenting in the kitchen is therapeutic for me. In the summer, gardening is therapeutic for me. I have a lettuce grow. I've been using that. I love like just doing things that I find I am okay and at peace with. And I'm learning to embrace being with myself more and more. And I think it's okay, when I don't have plans on the weekends and I'm just have plans with myself. I think that's beautiful, because that was one thing that, growing up, I'm very social. I'm a people person. I'm always like, oh, I want to do this or that. I always try to make plans. And now I'm like, no, I'm not making plans with myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think women, at least, again, I just turned 30, but I feel like such an adult. But like as you get older, I think women in general learn to find joy in their own company, because like whether you're married or not, like I love my alone time. I love my time where like I do the things that matter to me, like this podcast. Like Michael is super supportive of it, but like this is my thing,
right?
He's not here hovering around while I do this, or like if
but
I
also,
need him,
yes,
he'll
but
show
he's
up.
supportive. I'm sure he'll ask you, how did your podcast go? Like, who are your upcoming guests?
Yeah.
Like, you want someone that's going to be engaged in your passions.
Yeah. And I gotta say, sometimes even then he's not. But for me, it's not, as like I said, for me, it's not something that is super important, in that, like, I love that he's supportive and he's willing to, like, he has told me 1,001 times not to quit. Right. But, like, I also don't feel the need to go home and, like, talk to him about it. Just because, like, this is, for me, this podcast fills a role of, like, almost, like, keeping in touch with my brown girl self and the, like, all the friends I've made through it, like you and so many of my guests. And when you're in an interracial relationship, there is a little part of you that, like, your partner will never really understand. And it's not a huge part, but it's still a part. And you kind of just learn to, like, be okay with that. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just, like, something that happens where, like, he's never gonna know what it's like to be a brown girl. He has no idea.
Right.
You know, he's, like, a straight white guy who's just been broing out for the last 33 years. And, you know, I can sit here and lose my breath trying to explain that to him all day, or I can be like, I'm actually really fine with the way I am, and I can obviously over 8 years have shared plenty of it, but I also don't feel the need to, like, constantly dissect it with him.
Right.
And so, you know, I like having the things that are my own, and he has things that are his own. But for us, I always say, like, find the person who's equally needy, and both of us like our space.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to have your own passions, your own space. And what's really interesting is that someone, like, for me, it's like, if I want to date someone outside of my culture, I want to make sure they embrace my culture and, you know, have curiosity.
Yes.
And vice versa,
definitely.
right? Like, just have curiosity about the South Asian culture. And I think it's, you know, now that, you know, I'm older, I definitely think that I'm embracing, you know, other things, right? Like, if
are we stepping out of the brown boy circle?
Yeah, I think so.
Get it, girl. Love that. Welcome to the club.
So, you know, who knows? And I think, you know, it's such, honestly, like, I have a family friend. He's Gujarati, and he's married to a Caucasian woman, and they have a beautiful baby. And I was like, oh my God, this baby is so beautiful. And you know, I was thinking about I was just thinking about how she embraces the culture.
Yeah.
And really loves, like, wearing, you know, like, the Indian jewelry and the outfits when she can. And I thought that was so interesting. Like, you know, I love that other cultures are trying to embrace and learn, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I also just think it's nice to find someone that is willing to learn and grow and do those things with you.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I guess with this podcast, that is a point, at least I hope I've proven, is that, like, there are people out there that are more than willing and happy to learn about your culture and participate and respect it and embrace it. And it's all out there. And really, I know this might be an unpopular opinion, so I don't share too often, but that, like, brown girls, like, first of all, you're all stunning, successful, smart, like, you have so much to offer. But then they're like, I can only date a brown guy. And listen, brown guys are great. They have their thing, but they have a reputation of being, like, mama's boys. We are raised in a culture that is very patriarchal. They are raised with the mentality that they are the man of the house, that these are the roles of a woman. And I'm sure there are brown guys that have worked past that. Maybe they went to therapy. Great. But there's a lot more guys out there that you can date that are willing to embrace your culture and not, most importantly, not judge you the way brown guys do. Because I think, like, you being 40, I bet there's a lot of brown guys that wouldn't give you the time of day just based on that.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I agree. And I also agree that brown guys and their families, whether it's their mom, their brothers, their sister-in-laws, whoever, I definitely think that, you know, there's a lot of judgment, right? And a lot of I don't want to say brainwashing, but I do feel a lot of brown guys do get influenced easily by their family.
Yeah. It's whatever their parents want.
Parents, their siblings, whoever, right? I feel like I've experienced that personally, you know, dating men that are brown, that they have been heavily influenced by their family. And it makes me think, like, why don't you have a brain of your own? You know, like, where's your own opinion? Why are you so influenced by what others think in your family? You know, like, I want someone that is going to have a mind of his own. And I have yet to experience a brown guy with a mind of his own.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like, it's tough not to bash the brown guys, right? Like, we want to give them a chance. I have lots of brown guy friends who are wonderful people. But when I feel like I see these brown girls that are like, it's so hard to date. It's so hard to date. I'm like, have you considered opening up your dating pool? Because because even they have been conditioned to think that someone who isn't brown will never understand who they are or their culture. They won't accept them or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, actually, it's the opposite. I know lots of guys who have dated women who are older than them, who don't care if, she's been divorced or if she has a child from a previous relationship. None of those women who are willing to date outside the culture have an issue because there are men in other cultures that weren't raised to sit there and be like, your worth is based on how young and fertile you are, which is what it feels like with brown guys.
Oh, totally. And that's why maybe Priyanka is with Nick Jonas. Who knows?
Yeah, but I guarantee you, his family probably didn't give a shit that she's older than him.
She's 10 years older. And not only that, she talks about egg freezing and her IVF journey and all those things and going through surrogacy, right? And I really appreciate that honesty because it's so rare to see someone talk about it. And I think, I don't know, for me personally, I think, there's a lot of mind shift that has happened in the last few years for me.
Has some of that shift been that, if you open up that dating pool, that men are much less judgmental and much less, almost tearing you apart? I feel like brown guys, sometimes, like you said, it's what their family thinks, right?
Yes, I do.
Even if they don't care, the moms and the dads and the aunties are all in.
I feel like the guys I've dated in the past have been heavily influenced by their family, whether it's their mom, their sisters, brothers, who knows? I don't know, but I honestly think that has a lot to do with it. But my mind has shifted in terms of I've been able to have conversations with non-brown men that have been great, and who knows what will happen. But I just think I'm learning to embrace that, it is okay to meet someone that may not fit your checklist that you originally had, and your list will evolve, right? As you get older and you go through experiences. My list has changed from 3 years ago when we last spoke to now. It has changed to be more open-minded, to embrace other cultures, to embrace other men of other cultures.
Yeah, and just again, not to bash the brown guys, but they don't make it that hard to when it's I don't know a lot of brown guys who would be open to dating someone who already has a child, dating someone who's divorced, dating someone who's older, because all of these are stigmas and taboos our families have put on women who fall into those categories. Even I only recently realized this, but someone was talking about having their online dating profile on Indian websites and how there is a subcategory for divorcees. If you're divorced, you don't get to date someone who isn't divorced. There's a subcat. You only get to date other divorced people. And I'm like, what? That's bizarre, but also fucked up. I'm like, I don't know, and it wasn't they lived in India. This is the other thing. I'm like, maybe this is a thing back home. I don't know. But I'm like, no, this is happening here. And I'm like, it's weird.
It's so true. I was, thinking about, there's this matchmaking convention that and I'm sure you've heard about on social media, that someone said that, a lot of the brown guys over 40 were trying to go to the younger age group, meeting rooms. And that was triggering for me because it's okay, that just means that a lot of them don't want to date someone, their age or old, around their age, right? If a guy's 40, of course he's going to date someone or wants to date someone that's much younger. And that was triggering to hear because it's is that how all these brown men think?
Yeah, and I will say, I feel like that's pretty common with men. Listen, if you can get a 25-year-old who's when you're a girl and you're younger and you're always nitpicking the way you look. Oh, my nose is funny, my skin is weird, I'm not tall enough, I'm not skinny enough, whatever. And then I hit 30 and I was like, dude, I was so hot when I was 21. What was I doing? Why was I so upset at the way I looked? I was so cute. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm not attractive now, but I'm I was so harsh on myself when I was in my early 20s. And I look back at those pictures and I'm like, wait a second, what? Why was I so hard on myself? You know? Because if I look like that now, girl, my confidence would be even higher than it already is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like brown guys, whatever kind of guys, like I feel like if they can get a younger girl, like whether we like it or not, they are usually not against it. But I think the stigma isn't there so much with other cultures. And I'm not saying everyone is off the hook. Like lots of people come from different immigrant backgrounds and stuff. But I know a lot of guys, or at least all the guys I know that aren't brown, have all dated women with kids, have dated women that are older than them, younger than them. Like they might be women with established careers or not established careers. They're much more just like, I just want a woman who's like, you know, my best friend, my partner, someone who I get along with. Like their standards, not even standard, I don't want to call it that, but their expectations are more genuine, it seems, and less transactional. I think marriage in our culture is so transactional that they don't realize like there's someone else on the other side of this, that you are like nitpicking and checklisting and which boxes do they fit in, which ones they don't. And it's just like, this is exhausting. It's exhausting to watch. It's exhausting to see brown girls feel like their self-worth is tied up in it. And I sometimes just want to shake them, be like, literally look anywhere else.
Yeah.
If you just need a confidence boost, ask any other background to tell you that you're pretty, because they will.
I feel like we, like as women, we just need to not seek validation, but validate ourselves that, you know what, we are worthy, we deserve to be treated well. And there are many times when I've overlooked red flags in relationships because I was just trying to make it work.
We all do that. We're all guilty of it. But like you said, we learn.
You learn and
you get
grow,
past it.
yes.
And then we go from there. But I feel like this is probably a good point to wrap this up at.
Yes.
If you could leave the audience once again with a piece of advice, some words of wisdom, what would you like to share with them?
I would like to share with young females, you know, that are listening or watching to your show that, you know, you are worthy. And if you are over 40 and single, and whether you choose to be married or not to be married or in a relationship or not, just know that everything it does really does happen for a reason. I know as cliche as it sounds, I do believe that everything that has happened to me in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s now has happened to get me where I want to be at, you know, and I do believe that manifesting what we want can help. And I do believe that, you know, writing our intentions and just speaking about our intentions will help you get to what you want, and whatever that is.
Love that. And you know what? Cliches always come from a stem of truth. So they're not just cliches.
Yes.
I believe that everything happens for a reason too.
Yes.
If people wanted to find you online, where could they find you?
They can find me at my handle, Dose of Shivs, on Instagram. And I do have a website, www.doseofshivs.com. And also, you know, feel free to, you know, email me or DM me, and happy to have conversations if anyone needs any more advice on being 40 and navigating
dating and life and adulting, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being a guest. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Disha.